Alright people, let's have a look at this roll between Jer here on top and Nick on the bottom. Jer is a white belt, been training for a little while and mostly in the gi, so kind of transitioning over to no gi a little bit here. And when we are on top in half guard here, doing a decent job with body positioning wise, kind of over the top of our partner, but we could be doing a little bit more to control the hips here and prevent Nick's bottom leg from escaping, which looks like it's about to happen here. So with our hips all the way back here, it's going to be hard to stop that bottom leg coming to the outside. So we want to avoid closed guard. And a way that we can do that is by making sure that when we are in this half guard knee shield position, with our chest already on top of Nick's upper arm here, we're doing a good job at collapsing that top frame. So if we use our left hand as a tight waist, then we can prevent our partner from moving their hips backwards. And that way the person on the bottom won't have enough space to free this bottom leg to the outside. This right knee of Jer is in a pretty good position. Looks like we're almost above Nick's bottom knee there. And so in a position like this, we might be able to start switching to an over back grip with our right hand sort of over the back of Nick's head there, with our hand in between the shoulder blades and elbow at the back of the head. And then our left hand here could go to the foot. And when we start walking our partner over so that their back is flat on the mat, we'll have a good chance of getting rid of that knee shield. But you can see if we let this play out for a second here, we're allowing that top arm of Nick's to start extending again because we've let go of that chest pressure a little bit and we're no longer kind of tripoding up and driving down into that top arm. And here we start to kind of pin the bottom arm, which is good. But when there's so much space with this top leg, it means that that bottom leg is very likely to be able to come out. So what I would generally be doing here is looking to get our body a little bit more over the top of our partners so that we're putting more downwards pressure on them. We could also use this left forearm here to kind of chop Nick's arm down so that his elbow goes more towards his chest here. And that way we can collapse that frame of Nick's with his top arm towards his chest a little bit more. And using our left hand as a tight waist is a good way of preventing the hip escape. So there are some good passing instructionals and studies out there. But I would say in this position here, generally our right hand controlling the bottom knee first is a good way of preventing that bottom leg coming to the outside. And that should be our main goal when we're looking to pass a half guard knee shield like this. So you can see when we're trying to collapse that knee down with our arm, it's a pretty hard task. And we could do that a little bit more with our body weight rather than just our arm. And so here is another spot where I'd be looking to chop that arm down so that his frame is collapsed here. And now once we start widening our feet here, then there's even more space for that bottom leg of Nick's to come to the outside. So in general here, we should be trying to prevent that bottom leg from coming to the outside of the hips. And a way that we can do that is by using our right hand here. One more thing that we can think about is in this top half guard position, when Nick's top leg is very extended here, it means that he's got a lot of space. So with our left hand acting as a tight waist, we can look to bring our left hip in towards Nick's butt so that his heel is more stuck to his butt. And that way he won't be able to extend us away with that top leg. So I'll just make a little note here about passing half guard knee shield. And what we can do is think about collapsing the top arm frame using our tight waist to prevent the hip escape and using our hand, our free hand, to control the bottom knee. So we have a lot of other ways of passing through a half guard knee shield, and one of them would be to head back towards headquarters. So in this case, we could use our left hand again as a tight waist, but our right hand, instead of hand fighting here, could pick up the bottom knee. And then when we walk back towards the middle and we start putting our partner's back flat on the mat, that means that this knee will no longer be across our hips, but it will be pointing straight up in the air instead. And then we can look for things like knee slices and smash passes and whatnot from headquarters. So generally, moving from half guard knee shield to a headquarters position is a good option. So now we get stuck in closed guard. We should be thinking about getting our posture back and trying to hand fight here. And so this is a way that is very common in escaping closed guard in the gi, where we are trying to control the wrist and looking at putting that knee in the middle. But we are very vulnerable to off balances in this direction. And as a general rule of thumb, I don't like reaching back to uncross the feet when we are on our knees inside closed guard. It just leaves us vulnerable to things like triangles. And it also means that we generally are rotating our body like Jerry is in this case, where now his shoulders are in a line, his knee is all on the inside of Nick's hip. And that means that little flower sweeps and things like that are very likely to happen. So if you watch Hodger Gracie, like he's so good at sweeping people from this direction. So I think that's probably just a little bit of a habit left over from training in the gi there. And now we get caught inside a closed guard. So a note for this point here would be obviously not get stuck in a triangle, but generally inside closed guard, look to stand up to get out of closed guard. And that's something that came up in a previous video as well. It's just going to be a lot harder to break our partner's guard open while we're on our knees. And here we're starting to get stuck inside a triangle. And this is never any fun. So we'll see how this plays out. So Jazz done a good job of keeping that elbow across on the outside here. And the one thing that I would generally advise against is stacking to escape triangles. It's not that it doesn't work. It's just that people who are really good at triangles are also generally good at dealing with the stack. So it can be a good last resort, but in a position like this where we still have our head free and we still have this forearm across the hips here, I think a better course of action is to keep both of our knees on the ground. When both of our knees are on the ground, it means that we can slide our knees forward and sit back on our butt, so like our butt sitting back on our heels. And that way we can start thinking about looking up and posturing up as we're kind of pushing our partner's hips down with this forearm that's across the hip. This left hand can potentially reach to the inside of the knee there. So as a rule of thumb, when we're trying to posture up to get out of a triangle, we should keep both of our knees on the ground, because the second that we step up on this leg, it might feel like we can get more head height happening that way, but it makes it very hard for us to lift our shoulders up and keep our body in a straight line with our shoulders on top of our hips there. So the other thing that happens is when we step up, this leg is potentially underhookable and we are going to be struggling a lot more once our leg gets hooked. So when we're escaping triangles, early stage escapes, I recommend keeping 2 knees on the ground. Keep 2 knees on the ground to posture up. So once we start stacking here, see how we're kind of driving into that triangle, which is generally hard work here, and Nick's been a good training partner here. But this is a spot where if we did need some late stage triangle attempts here, we could try a couple of things. We could try throwing our feet over the top of the body here, or potentially in the armpits as a way of sitting back and using our feet to create space. And we can also try putting our right hand in the hip. So if we have our thumb on top of the hip and our fingers kind of underneath, our left hand can reach underneath the lower back here. And we can try and dive out of the triangle in this direction, which is the direction that the lock is on. It also means that we will be having about a forearm width's worth of space here. So with our hand in the hip and our elbow out wide, we have a decent chance of trying to escape in this direction. So obviously people who are good at finishing triangles will still most likely finish it here, but some late stage triangle escapes are handy to have. You can see here we get rolled over, and then we run into some other people and start repositioning here. So generally with triangle escapes, we just want to keep our knees on the ground while we're posturing up. And if we are looking for some late stage escapes, then trying to throw the legs across the body or try and dive to one side would be a good point of call. So now here, getting that bottom knee and elbow connected, which is very good. We want to be trying to stay on our side here. And then this is kind of I wouldn't say a lucky escape, but it's a very common mistake here is we have our bottom knee and elbow connected. We've done a good job of framing our partner's head up and away from us. And there is a tendency to try and throw this top leg over the back and try and get to close guard. But with our top leg over the back, we can't create any more space for our bottom leg to come out. So it works out in this case, but Nick is being relatively cooperative here. And I would say that a better course of action is, instead of going flat on our back here with this left knee pointing up, we would ideally try and stay on our side like we are now so that we can continue hip escaping, or not even hip escaping, but just we'll have some room to move into when we start pushing this top knee in front of our partner's chest. And the way that we can do that is by jamming it behind our bottom knee, right? So there's this gap between our calf and our hamstring, and if we can get our top knee in as well, then we can start opening that up in front of our partner's chest, and that will give us some space. And because we're on our side, we can move our hips backwards, and that will allow us to free our bottom leg to half guard. So I'll just make a little note here that whenever we are escaping side control, so when escaping the side control and we get our bottom knee in, we want to get our top knee in as well to make space for our bottom leg to escape. So here we get to close guard, and we see how this close guard is only really our feet crossed at the moment. We'll see if we adjust that, but looks like we're trying to hand fight and get onto our side here. So as a general little note here, whenever we're closing our guard, we would ideally get our ankles nice and crossed there. And a way that we can do that is by using our hands on the triceps to try and pull ourselves in towards our partner. And then that can let us cross and recross our legs and try and climb up a little bit higher with our legs there. So now here, looking for some hand fighting, getting onto our hip and using this kind of scissor sweep here. Looks like we're setting that up. Very good. We get to the top here. And now straight away, Nick starts regarding. So once we get to the top, I would say as soon as we find some success with this scissor sweep, a good thing to think about is keeping our right knee down as heavy as possible and starting to address this bottom elbow of Nick's with either an underhook, a wrist pin, or lifting up that bottom elbow. And that can just help prevent the knee elbow escape here. So we're in a pretty decent spot to try and stay on top here. And now Nick recovers to half butterfly, and he also has the underhook. So in a spot like this, we are at risk of being elevated and our partner getting their bottom knee in as well. So trying to pummel to that underhook would be good. And in general, whenever we are attacking or whenever we're kind of passing, we want to keep our partner's hips and shoulders flat on the mat. So particularly when they have an underhook here like this, trying to sit all your weight back on your butt can be a good option, because if our knees are on the ground and our butt's back on our heels there, it'll just mean it is harder for our partner to extend this butterfly hook. And the way that they need to extend that butterfly hook is by getting their heel away from their butt. So if we can jam their heel towards their butt there, then that can give us some more time to start looking at pummeling to our underhook and things like that. And then we could think about pummeling our own butterfly hook in or moving towards the center line. But in general, trying to keep our partner's hips flat. And if they do have hooks in, then trying to keep their heels stuck to their butt is a good idea. So now we get rolled over, we're on the bottom of mount here, and we have this kind of overhook position, and that right hand is kind of floating. So when we try and knee elbow escape here, it's important that we have our hand in front of our partner. So you can see that when we are on top, having the overhook is pretty much only good for trying to bridge and roll in the direction that we have that overhook on, because that can be removing the post of our partner. So a good way to hit the bridge and roll from a position like this is we have Nick's arm trapped. We also want to trap his foot. So by stepping our ankle over the top of his, that means he won't be able to extend that arm out. And this right hand we could use in the armpit to help create some direction when we start bridging. And a little tip whenever we're bridging is if we want to bridge towards our left, if we move our head towards the right first, we'll open up a bigger arc here for our neck to be able to roll into, and we should be able to bridge more effectively from this position. But once we start trying to turn on our side and move our hips out, we really want this left hand in front of our partner's hips. With our hand in front of the partner's hips, our forearm across the hips there, we should then be able to keep their hips relatively in the same position here as we're hip escaping. It also means that when Nick's knee has come off the ground here, we would have potential follow-ups like escaping to single X and things like that. So whenever we're defending against mount, if we can't hit our bridge and roll, then we want to get our hands back on the inside. And that's going to mean that we can frame the hips away from us. So whenever we're escaping mount, we want our forearm across the hips and hands on the inside. So it is okay to try and bridge and roll when we have the overhook, but after that fails, we really need our hands back in front of our partner, and that's going to mean that we have less chance of getting our arms isolated away from our body, and bad things happen after that. So here, doing a good job at trying to catch the foot perhaps, but I'd say the golden rule of mount defense is never committing this elbow across the center line. So you can see here, we have our left elbow on the outside of Nick's hip, which is good. But as soon as we start bringing this elbow across the middle, it means that we are susceptible to being gift wrapped, where Nick can use his right hand to grab our wrist from underneath our head, and then back takes and whatnot are going to come from there. So we always want to keep that left forearm across the hips with that left elbow on the outside of the hips there. And then that way we can start performing our knee elbow escapes and things like that without our partner being able to get to this gift wrap position. So now here, defending against the back, and we are pretty much in a body triangle type attack here, which is going to be tough, and we should be trying to hand fight and control the hands. And as a rule of thumb, we want our hands on top of our partners, both when we're attacking and defending, because that means that we're going to have a good chance at preventing the strangle happening. Now we are turning over here, and that choke starts coming in. So just when we're defending the back, ideally we want to get to a cross grip, thumb down on the wrist, so that we can start using our free hand to potentially help with the hooks or help with rotational type escapes, but pretty hard to defend our back and our neck when our partner's hands are on top of ours. So here we are starting in turtle, and we can see that we're kind of giving away this all-important space between our hip and our armpit. If we think about turtle as a potential back take for our partner, then we want to prevent them from getting any kind of hand or foot or knee or anything in between the space between our hip and our armpit. So by having our head on the mat, sitting our butt back on our heels and tucking our elbows in towards our hips, we should be able to use our elbows to defend against those hands and knees coming into that space. So as a general rule of thumb, whenever we are defending turtle, we want to defend the space between our hip and our armpit when turtled, because that's where they want their hooks. So we want to prevent all of those things happening. So now here we get broken down here, and as we are returning to our turtle, we're forced to make this big movement and open up a little bit, which Nick does a good job at capitalizing on, with that right knee coming into the space on the far side and that left foot acting as a casoto. So now here, a very good defense against the casoto is to use our free foot to start pushing our partner's knee. So hard to see if Nick's left foot is trapping our right foot, but if it is, we can use our foot to push that knee, and we can try and slide our inside knee forward to defend against that Casoto. So this is a little bit better positioning-wise with our head down and our elbows tucked in. But ideally here, we want to add in some hand fighting. So if we can get our left hand over the top of Nick's hand, we might be able to push it out enough to be able to pummel our elbow to the inside of Nick's forearm, and that way we are safe from that space. And alternatively, if that is too difficult because the hand grip is too deep, then we can use our right hand, so a cross grip, to push Nick's hand out, and then we can pummel our left elbow inside that space. So that's a very good spot to specific train. It's just starting here in turtle and trying to defend against your partner getting into that space between the hip and the armpit. So here we're kind of creating some space, and we are doing a better job here at hand fighting. But you can see with that cross grip, we're opening up that space on the far side here. Now defending against the power half and defending against the back again. So them's is the break sometimes. So here we're attacking from turtle this time. It looks like we've got to a double unders position, and we've got a knee inside that space, which is good. So here we could look to break our partner down towards a hip. But now when we switch to a seatbelt here, that allows our partner to reach back for this single leg. So the vulnerability of using a seatbelt when we are attacking from turtle is that we are opening up the option of a single leg for our partner. So if we have double underhooks, if our right hand is underneath the armpit of our partner there, then what I would suggest doing is using our right elbow to kind of reserve the space for our right knee to come in towards this space here. And then that way, with our right knee jammed in between the hip and the armpit, when we switch to a seatbelt, our partner won't be able to reach back and attack a single leg. So if we keep playing this out a little bit, we're getting single legged here, which means we should basically start looking to defend this in the same way that we would defend a wrestling single leg, where if we can switch to this left hand being on this side of the body and start moving our hips around so that we're in a more north-south orientation, we can use our chest and body to start tucking Nick's chin towards his chest, and we should be looking to sprawl off this single leg as soon as possible. So here it's generally going to be a mistake to continue attacking the back because it's going to be very difficult for us to get our hooks in and whatnot. So this is exactly what we're talking about here. Switching to a front head is a good idea. And now when we are attacking front head, we want to keep our partner's weight a little bit more stuck to the mat there. So Nick started to hand fight and get his head out, and then we start looking to reach over to the back and control the body here. So a couple of little tips here when we are attacking front head in a turtle position. We want to try and keep this shoulder pressure down on the back of our partner's neck and drive their butt back towards their heels. That way, when we pop up to our feet, we'll have more ability to drive our partner back so that more weight is on their knees here. We can keep weight on their elbows as well, and we can start looking to attack front head options. So in general here, we want to drive our partner back onto their heels so that they can't move their body away quite as freely. And now Nick's trying to get back to guard here, and we're in this half guard passing spot again. So again, we have pretty decent positioning with our upper body here, and we've got a good chance of just using some even head pummeling here. Like we can use our head and our shoulder rolling over the top of this elbow of Nick's to try and collapse his arm more down towards his chest here. And after we've used our hand as well to potentially chop this arm down a little bit, that's where I'll be reaching for a tight waist grip here to prevent that hip escape. So if we let this play out a little bit, doing a good job of trying to push that arm down, but you can see that we're not driving forwards enough. We're kind of sitting back on our heels there, and that's letting our partner extend their upper body frames more and more, and then we have to deal with these feet coming back into play. So here looks like we're doing some standing passing here, get around to the side control, and we want to immediately think about preventing that bottom knee from coming in. So turning our partner's knees away from us is a great option, and then looking to step to mount is good as well. And so now we can see that we're attacking that far wrist with our hand here, looking to get to an underhook, which is good to prevent any kind of knee elbow escapes happening. And then here we're climbing that underhook up and start pummeling to the inside here. And probably just try and keep that underhook as much as possible so that our partner can't turn on their side as much, because if we do have our right hand as an underhook, that means we'll be able to sort of walk that arm up all the way next to the head and start flattening our partner's shoulders out, and that makes it much harder for their hips to turn over and have any access to our bottom foot there. And as soon as somebody's trying to turn on their side and catch that bottom foot, we should be addressing that bottom elbow as quickly as possible. So that's the end of the round. Hopefully this helps, and I will pause this video and just add in a few resources for you guys. So the main resources I can think of here are, this is a little short by Less Impressed, More Involved, which is a great channel if you haven't already checked it out, talking about inside camping, which is basically what we're doing against a half guard knee shield. And if you want to look at his other guard passing studies, they are excellent resources, but this is just a good idea of talking about collapsing the upper body frames and then how we can use different postures to put pressure on both the upper body frames and the lower body frames, threaten our top side underhook and chest to chest. And then it also mentions that over back grip that I was talking about should be successful in collapsing the upper body frames. So this is again standing up to get out of close guard. And then here, this is just a good short on how to escape triangle, and it does talk about having our knees on the ground and sitting our butt back on our heels so that we can get maximum posture. So hopefully this helps, and I'll see you guys next time.